today we are going to work on the next step of our printmaking project. So I've gone through, I've done all of these lines through here. I've added in all of the texture, all of the cross hatching. I actually think I'm going to add just a tiny bit more in this section here. Okay. So as you're adding these in, you want to kind of make sure that you're keeping in mind what's light and dark. It's always better to do too few lines and then add some lines in there as necessary than to do too many and then not be able to erase them. Okay, so we've got those in there. I'm going to go ahead and I've untaped this side right here. Be very careful not to take off the plastic film whenever you untape your paper. So I'm going to bring this back around here. And so when I'm doing this, you can actually see that it's pulling up a little bit on the film. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very carefully flatten this out here. And you can either cut it or rip it, or if you can, or you want to work the opposite direction instead of pulling back this way, so it'll pull the film off. I'm just kind of taking this edge of the tape and pulling this back this way. And I'm holding on very securely so I don't move this film on the side. So I have my picture right here. Okay, so I'm looking, double checking, making sure everything looks pretty good here. I am going to add just a little bit more shading here. To make it a little bit darker on his underside, just because while he is a black crow, the way that the light is hitting him, it's more shadowed down here. I'm going to add a little bit more through this area right here. And this area here. Okay, so again, I'm just looking at my picture. Now I can see it a little bit more clearly. And then okay. Feeling pretty good about that. So I'm going to hold on to my original printout while I'm working on this because it's going to help me as I work through these steps. Okay, I want to make sure that I am staying true to the bird, and so sometimes if you go with just your drawing of it, sometimes you get a little bit too far away from it, and you want to make sure that you're not missing out on anything important. Okay, especially if it was harder to see in some areas. Okay, so I'm just adding some finishing touches here. Okay, I think that looks a lot better. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just take this here and I'm going to flip it over. Okay, now I have a film on this side as well, and so I'm going to carefully pull that up. Do I say that? Do I have a film? There we go. It's always best to start with the edge. Okay, so I'm taking this just barely back, and so once I have a little triangle that I can pull, I'm going to start pulling this very carefully. And whenever you're pulling this, it's better, instead of pulling just straight up, it's better to kind of press against this as you're rolling away from it. Okay, so I'm pressing against the plexiglass as I'm pulling away. I'm going to finish. I'm going to take this here, pull this all the way off, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I have the plastic taken off on one side, not on the other side, so you can still see my design here. It's looking pretty spiffy. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scratcher, which looks like this. And this is actually kind of heavier than you think it would be. It has this top here and this pointed end here. Okay, this end is on the sharp side, so you want to be very careful when you're using this. Okay, and we're just going to go ahead and start. Okay, you can choose what makes the most sense for you. Oftentimes I like to kind of start in one area and work my way over just to make sure that I fully get that done before moving on. That way I can make sure I've got it right. And so I'm going to start my scratching, and I think I'm going to go ahead and work on his head up here first. And so I'm going to just be drawing along I'm going to start drawing along this line here, and I'm pressing in, and literally you're etching into this thing. You're just kind of scratching at it. Okay, and as you work on this, you will get a few pieces of plexiglass that will kind of come up a little bit. You can just brush those away. Okay. And so I'm kind of just working through this edginess here. Okay, so again, you can kind of see if we can get a little bit closer for you. Okay, so as we're etching through, okay, and you'll go over these lines a couple of times just to make sure that it's deep enough to hold ink. Okay, so you can kind of see that. If you look up closely, do you see those little specks right there? That is the plexiglass that's being etched off of the surface there. Okay, so I'm working kind of on my outline here. Again, making it nice and edgy to kind of fit with my style and my design here. Here, and I'm just kind of working through. So I have a little bit of an outline going here. I'm going to go ahead and get his eye etched in. And again, the best thing to do for this is small movements. Okay, it's really hard to make just one solid circle. You really want to kind of do this small little dashes along there that are connected. Just like this. Okay, and then as you look at it, you will start to see where those white lines are at. That is from the etching. Okay, so your etching will start to look white as you go through these steps. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and work on the texture that I use for his feathers, okay, on his face right here. And so I'm just doing those short sketch lines again. And remember, you don't want to do super long lines if your picture does not, if it doesn't make sense for your picture. Okay, and so because of my bird here, it doesn't make sense to draw a bunch of super long lines whenever I'm doing this shading here. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going. Definitely has that edgy sound. Okay, and as you need to, you can move, you can turn this around. Just like this. Okay, and I'm using a pretty tough pressure. Okay, I want to make sure that I'm really, kind of digging in there. Like that. Okay, and you can see I'm getting those little bits of plastic that are coming up. Okay. Now, if I were working on the part that I had that as being a little bit lighter, whenever I get to that part, I'm going to really make sure that I'm spacing out that texture. And I'm looking at the lines that I drew on the other side. And it's hard to get it exactly perfect, just like you had on the other side, but you want to try to get as close as you can, right? So I'm trying to keep them kind of spaced out, just like I have here, especially since I really like the way that I did that. And I feel like I did that part pretty well. I thought I did a good job representing that area, so I want to make sure that I can match that as closely as possible. Up here it doesn't quite matter as much just because there's a ton of lines super close together, and so you can't really, it's hard to pick out the individual lines anyway. Okay, so we're getting closer. Okay, and see again all of those white spaces here up in this area right here. You can see, especially if you compare the beak to this part, that white is the areas that I have already dug in. Okay. See if you can turn. There we go. It's a lot easier to see that way. Okay, so you're just going to keep moving through, being super careful. Start working small, right? And again, like I said, I like to move from one area to the other side, just to make sure that I get everything correctly, so that I don't lose part of my drawing. So you'll keep moving through. We'll check in and see if you have gotten these deep enough. You can usually kind of feel, and if it feels not particularly textured, you might have to go over some of those areas again. So when I'm feeling mine right here, I feel like maybe I need to dig in a little bit deeper, and so I would go over those areas again, just to make sure I really got in there, because you're basically carving this back so that whenever you roll your ink on here, your ink has somewhere to hang out until it gets pressed into the paper. Okay, and so if you don't have a space for your ink to hang out at, then it's not going to show up, your picture won't show up the way that you want it to, or the way that it should. Okay. Sometimes if I have like a specific thing, I might kind of dig in that area just a little bit, like, so say I drew this line right here, I might kind of go back in that area a couple times just to make sure I really got that in there, like that. Okay, and that's not really coloring, it's more like you're kind of digging a small dish for that color to hang out in, a small well. Okay, so you're going to keep working through this, and then the next video will be about how to prepare to print. Okay, so your keep your hands nice and loose while you're working on this, so you don't get hand cramps, and make sure that you are exercising as much patience as you can.